Good evening, agents. Welcome to episode 31 of Behind the Scanner. Your hosts for tonight are Daphne from Washington, D.C., Jorge Pedrero from Mexico City. Our special guest tonight is Brian Tao. Welcome to the show. The Q&A tool is enabled for tonight's broadcast. Submit your questions throughout the show, and we'll ask as many as time allows. If you know someone who would be a great guest, submit their information to us at bit.ly/BTS_guest. Finally, you can watch past episodes and subscribe to our channel at youtube.com/behindthescanner. And now, your hosts of Behind the Scanner.
All right. Well, welcome, agents, to episode 31 of Behind the Scanner. And I think we're ready to get the show started. So, shall we? We do have one guest for tonight. We may have another special guest to be introduced later on. But in the meantime, we have Brian Tao, who is Agent Shaper Beast from Toronto, Canada. So, welcome.
Thanks. Great to be on. I haven't seen you guys in a while, so I'm pretty excited for tonight.
Absolutely. And I have to say, it's pretty cool to have all the North American countries represented here tonight. Now, as we had introduced earlier, you are known as Shaper Beast, but it wasn't always that way. Why don't you give us a little run through that history?
Yeah, sure. I guess when I met most of you, this would have been, I guess, over a year ago. And I was playing under the name Tracer. That was my agent name. And I had started playing, I think, I got my invite November 29th of 2012. So one of the original agents here in Toronto. And I've had that for about the first year. And there's a long story behind this whole Tracer to Shaper Beast transition, and Shaper Beast was actually kind of an in-joke we had on the Enlightened side here in Toronto for a while. Shaper Beast is basically, as you can tell by the name, it's something that the Shapers introduced to the planet here, and the joke was Shaper Beast was my pet Shaper who lived in my closet, and one thing led to another, and I became Shaper Beast as my agent name.
Interesting.
Sorry, you want to have
No, you go for it, Jorge.
Hey, Jorge.
Can I go? Hi, Brian. How many times have you had to change it?
It was just the one time, because it was kind of a strange thing. There was, I don't know if you guys remember, way back in the day, at the end of 2013, there are a whole bunch of bans going on, and there's one time it actually happened to my Tracer account, but I had stopped playing because of the winter, and I had actually not even noticed what had happened to the account. And after a while, you go back and forth. Niantic, they tend not to talk about such things, and I had actually stopped playing for probably 7 months. It was November to about May, so it was only just the one time. So yeah, there's Tracer. We got up to level 8. This is before we even had levels 9 through 16, and now Shaper Beast, which I just hit level 14 earlier tonight. So there you go.
Oh, congratulations! All right.
Hey!
Wow.
I know, that's pretty awesome. And
6 months. 6 months to A14. There you go.
Wow.
now, I mean, you talked about a little bit of the banning process, and you've gone through that multiple times. And
Yeah.
what were the reasons, or were you even given any by Niantic?
So, interestingly enough, I know we see a lot of complaints on the Ingress community about people getting banned. They say they don't know. Whether that's the entire story, it's always hard to tell. but I actually had one time I got an actual reply from a Niantic employee. This was, I think, might have been September, and this was right around the time Ingress, the badges came out. And somebody out there had discovered there was a way to get everybody's stats through one of the Niantic websites. So they had left it open. There was no password, and I thought, well, let's go see how everything stacks up here in Toronto. So I went through and I looked through all the known agents here in Toronto, and there were several hundred at the time who were active. And I put up a list, posted it to our local cross-faction community, and said, hey, everyone, this is what the badges will look like when they come live, in a couple of weeks. And a couple of days later, my Tracer account at the time stopped working. I thought, oh, well, let's see what's going on. Get the scan failed and the usual type of thing. So I went through the website, emailed Niantic, and to my surprise, I actually got a reply back. And all they wanted to say was, oh, could you take that list down because we don't want to have agent names up on a website? And I said, sure, I'll just delete the file off of Google Drive, and a day later they reactivated my account. So an interesting way to get someone's attention, I would say, is by suspending their account and wait until they contact you.
Interesting. All right, so go ahead.
Sorry, guys.
Sure.
I think I'm having a little bit of problems with my connection. Can you hear me well?
You sound great here. It's a whole North
Really?
American
Great.
thing. So much power.
Great. Well, sorry, Brian, to interrupt,
Yeah.
but let's get away a little bit from Ingress,
Sure.
since you also seem to have reinvented yourself a couple of times. I like the camera profile image that you have on your G Plus, and
Yeah.
it's quite a setup you got there. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's one of the facts that probably a little known fact to the people I hang out with now. My education and my degree is actually in cell and molecular biology. So that's what I studied
Oh my
going through university.
Yeah, not complicated at all.
Yeah, genetics and physiology and organic chemistry, all that sort of thing. But when I graduated, I actually got a job in IT, which I'm sure is familiar to most Ingress players. Did that for about 10 years, and then because my company was acquired by a much larger company, they went through a bunch of consolidation and packaged out a bunch of staff, including me. At the time, I had already started a side business in photography, so I thought, well, why not take this sort of as a hint to say, you know what, maybe I should try starting my own business. So that happened almost 10 years ago. So I've actually been a full-time professional photographer since 2005. So yeah, it's an interesting experience when you're running your own company. You're basically your own boss. So if any resistance guys are listening out there from Toronto, this is why you see me out there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a weekday. It's not because I'm unemployed. I actually just set my own hours. That's all.
Agreed. Yeah, no, +1 for all the photographers out there and that golden hour. Although I guess in that part of the hemisphere, yeah, you've got different hours before and after the sunrise or the sunset.
You got it.
But anyway, so this diversity with your studies and your work, would you say that it's kind of helped a little bit with your play style, or maybe even some of the ops that you participated in?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always had this. I've always loved data, I guess, if that's the simplest way of putting it. Just because with my science background, that's always something I really loved. And going into IT was the same thing, right? You're always working with data. You're always working with evidence. So you're not just making wild guesses. So I tend to like precision. I tend to like detail. So has it come in handy in planning ops? It has. It certainly has come in handy when running Anomaly. So we've had Minotaur and Helios, most recently here in Toronto, and I was the op for both. So that involves a lot of, as anyone who's involved in that sort of thing, a lot of organization and a lot of on-the-fly thinking. So that sort of thing has always been something I think I've been good at, and it has been reflected in the type of studies that I've done. So a lot of that on-the-job experience, right, not only through university but also through IT, I think does have some sort of applicability here in Ingress. Now as long as, the only thing now is if I could find a job playing Ingress, that would be even better. But don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I think we all wish for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, speaking of playing style, you originally described yourself as a casual lone wolf kind of player. Now, how is that? Because I noticed in the comments of this episode event that you seem to be pretty well known by global players, including our former guest, Epi and Europe, from Europe, sorry. So, are you a lone wolf or you are like a big player in the Ingress world?
Secrets.
Yeah, well, see, so this is interesting. This kind of discussion comes up all the time whenever we have either an Enlightened get-together or we do a cross-faction thing. The reason why I call myself a casual player is because I don't really like having to go play the game on somebody else's schedule. So if someone comes and takes down my home portals, for instance, I'm not the type to have to interrupt what I'm doing, rush out, recapture, and link everything back. I'm just like, well, you know what? Let's leave it till I'll come out. I'll go out tomorrow. So I'm casual in the sense that I only want to play when I feel like playing. But sometimes when I go out and play, I can play for hours at a time. So it's casual in the sense that I'm not the one to react quickly to anything happening in the game. I do like to play, obviously, and it is kind of weird because I remember I hit, like I said, I hit A14 in 6 months, which I don't know if that's fast or not, but I didn't really think I was playing all that much, but it seems pretty quick to me. So casual in the sense that I guess the game's not really a huge priority for me when it comes to interrupting other things. So if something happens out there right now, and I've got the intel map up on my other screen, if I see my portals going down, be like, well, whatever, I'll just take it back tomorrow. No big deal.
I hear you on that. All right, well, let's talk about badges a bit. Normally, I think I'm known for asking people about where they are in their Explorer or even their Pioneer badge.
Yeah.
But you had something interesting happen with your Guardian badge. So you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. This was, again, back when badges first came out, so I think that was August, September timeframe last year. And there was one particular portal here in Toronto on the waterfront that you couldn't really get to because it was behind a construction fence. And through a lot of experimentation, I found that if I had my phone in one hand and then I had a mobile hotspot in the other, if I turned GPS off on my phone, turned off LTE, and only used Wi-Fi for positioning and for data, it would drift me over that particular portal. Now, keep in mind, I did this 2 springs ago. So this was before we had badges, so nobody cared about Guardians at the time, and I just hung onto that portal. So the day after badges went live, I immediately got my Black Guardian. So for me, this whole Guardian thing, it's never been anything I really chased after. I can understand a lot of the frustration over Guardian hunting and so on. But for me, it was one of those things, well, I already had Black, no big deal. And now if you look at Shaper Beast's profile, I have the Platinum, which, again, is good enough to get to to level 14 and level 15. I don't know if I'll ever try for level 16. So the fact that that I don't have a Black Guardian again, not really a big deal as far as I'm concerned.
All right, no, good for you.
Yeah.
No, it's great to hear about someone who hasn't had to deal with that whole guardian and guardian hunting much first and everything. All right, but now, not to get away from the whole controversy, but there is something about hacking, and I don't mean like hacking for portals and portal supplies. We're hacking, and now I'm hearing through the grapevine that there are some Ingress hacker hangouts that you, of all people, may have snuck into. Now, first of all, I had no idea that there would be some collaboration amongst hackers. I mean, if anyone's going to be kind of that whole solo player sort of attitude, I guess it would be like hackers. But what did you get to see while you were in, or whether or not you're still in those hangouts? But yeah, can you like give us a little sneak peek of what that's like talking to other people?
Yeah, it's funny. So like I said, because of my background and I guess because of my disposition, I love anything to do with data. So even in my previous life in IT, I was specifically working in IT security. So there's reams and reams of data you have to go through, and you're always looking for a way to break the system. That was literally my job, was to try and break the system before the bad guys did. And I remember actually it was an essay by Andrew Krug, who couldn't join us tonight, but he wrote something. I think it was, I can't remember when it was, but it might have been
The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
Yeah, that was like last spring or last summer. So he had written this great piece about the good, the bad, and the ugly of Ingress. And when I read that, yeah, that's right. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that maybe Niantic is not providing us, that we, as the player community, could do better. So, I mean, we all know about IITC. Yes, we know. Like I tell people, yes, it's a TOS violation. If you want to call it cheating, go ahead. But I guess my viewpoint is, if you can do it, then all the more power to you. I know people out there who run bots. I know people out there who do this and that. And, I may not like it because, I mean, I've been hunted by bots as well down in my area. And what I wanted to do was to figure out what it is they're doing. Locally here in Toronto, and I'm sure it's the same in a lot of other cities, we have a separate hangout that's specifically for bot hunting. So whenever we notice anything interesting about that sort of thing, we'll go report it, and we can either report it to Niantic, or we can try and get more information from other players, and so on and so forth. My whole approach is, if I can figure out how the scrapers, the spoofers, and the botters are working, that might give us an advantage. And just because I find that stuff really interesting. So a couple of things I've noticed. It's been probably a year now that I've been in some of these groups. And I understand what you're saying. You probably figure most people have that, I guess it's that stereotype. You're sitting in a darkened basement, and you're just playing your video games, and you're spoofing away on your computer and so on. Surprisingly, and this might be kind of controversial to people who don't know the scene, a lot of these people are regular players. They're not only sitting in their basement doing this. They actually go out and play, and they're really active. And they're, maybe again surprising to some people, there's some pretty big names who do this sort of thing. They may not admit it, but they are out there. So my whole thing is, you know what? I know how you guys think. I know why you guys do it in a lot of cases, and I understand it, right? So if you think about it, I guess when Ingress started, it was only Android players. It would have been people who tend towards the hacker side of the mentality anyway, right? Maybe not so much these days, but I remember back in the early days, as early as I think it was April 2013, there was someone, I think from Poland, who had one of the Polish players who had published another essay about what he had done to hack Ingress. And the sort of stuff they could get away with back then was incredible. And that's what really got me into this whole thing. I want to see what you could get away with, you know? So, you know, in a lot of cases, they're not trying to ruin the game. You know, I've talked to a lot of these players, and they could be very, I guess, on one end of the scale, they might be scraping intel, right? And I can tell you, I do the same thing. So there's all sorts of information you can get from intel. The most obvious one, obviously, is the whole Guardian hunting thing, because that causes all sorts of drama on the Ingress group. But you can also do things like figure out where all your unique captures are, right? That's pretty handy. So if someone in my community says, "Hey, Brian, I need another 1,000 captures to get my platinum," or something like that, I can actually go back and generate a map that shows them exactly all the portals they've already visited, so they can go to a new region and try and get the next badge. You know, somebody might ask, "Where's my Guardian?" Because Niantic took away that information from the intel map. Nobody knows where their oldest portals are. So I kind of look at that and I think, well, Niantic, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to fix the problem, but you're actually, in some cases, hurting the real players. You know, so there is good and there's evil. To me, things like IITC are just tools, right? The ability to scrape comm is a tool. It's like buying a baseball bat, right? You can use it to play baseball, or you can use it to beat someone over the head with. So it's a tool. It just depends on how you want to use it. You know, and this whole thing about the collaboration, yeah, it's not. I guess it's not individual people sitting in their basements doing this sort of thing, spoofing around, you know, killing guardians or you know, taking down fields. I mean, I'm sure there is that as well, but for the most part, these are people who work together. These are people who are software developers. These are database admins. These are server admins. They get together, and I've seen some pretty impressive and in some cases pretty scary systems put together where you can track a player literally anywhere in the world they go. So for all the people watching, if you think your Guardian is safe, it might be, but it's not because somebody doesn't know about it. It's because somebody doesn't care enough to go take out your Guardian. You know, I mean, that's the truth of the matter. Right. Every Guardian is known. Whether someone decides to go to take it out is another issue.
It's interesting. Yeah, I'm thinking about someone I know who had a Guardian in a very sort of remote part of a very different country.
Korea, perhaps?
His local opposite faction members went through a lot of trouble to take care of that. But luckily, I guess he apparently had a backup somewhere. God knows where. I don't know the whole story, but
right.
He did get that. I guess something I'm curious about, like, well, while you were in there, and actually, well, Andrew would like to ask this.
Okay.
Is you found anything while you're digging on like how things work that may have actually surprised you, other than from your side?
Surprised me. I don't know. I think, well, maybe the only thing that surprises me, and I hope Niantic is listening and taking this constructively, but from the analysis that I've done and that other people have done, there would seem to be a lot of things that Niantic could be doing to stop or at least slow down this problem. But they don't seem to be doing it. I mean, I guess to me that's surprising because some of the things are fairly easy to do, at least from a player's perspective, and knowing enough about IT and internet technology and things like that. How do you track these sort of things down? Because that's the type of thing I used to do, was to track down the bad guy if someone's attacking our network. And I don't know why Niantic isn't doing some of the things. I'm sure there's a very plausible reason. It's probably something to do with resources, and they just don't have enough staff to get on the problem. But there might be 2 or 3 things that Niantic could be doing that I'm just very surprised they haven't done yet. These are things that people have identified literally 18 months ago. You know, the game's only 24 months old, so if 6 months into the game your own players are finding weaknesses in your system, and now we're just over 2 years into it. You still haven't fixed them. There's something wrong there, you know. So I guess that's kind of the most surprising thing I found, because I would have expected Niantic to have more or less gotten a better handle on things by now on the 2nd anniversary.
Okay, well, I guess, and I don't know, maybe you're already aware of this. I mean, Andrew had actually mentioned this a few episodes ago, and not that I want to hold you accountable to that knowledge, but we actually had a local spoofer, or pretty obvious spoofer, who would make it to vast distances at almost record-breaking, time-breaking kinds of very Herculean, not even Olympian, but Herculean type speeds. And there was, and forgive me because I'm not the technological person here in our trio, but once a recent update, I think maybe 3 or 4 versions ago, happened, that person, and then another subsequent account that this person had made, made no other appearances since. And so, while, and I don't know if it's a capability issue or whatnot, but it just seemed like, at least our theory with my teammates is that maybe they finally are able to detect to some degree of that type of behavior and are able to squash it. But I mean, remember, I'm coming from the non-technical point of view, but but there was a noticeable difference in the different activity, not only with a specific player that, I mean, was just so obvious. In fact, I think Andrew was planning on making a mission to make it from this city of Virginia to the next, or 2 cities away in the next 3 minutes. But they, that seems to have been pretty squashed.
Yeah, to Niantic's credit, they have been doing a lot of work on the problem. Specifically, I know here in Toronto, I would say probably the height of the bot problem would have been between, I guess, maybe March, April, May timeframe. And we've still been seeing them every once in a while, but it has been steadily going down. Now, I know from what I've seen and what from other people are talking about, Niantic has been doing certain things to stem the problem. And here's kind of the somewhat depressing thing too. A lot of the visible bots you see are only visible because the person running the software behind the scenes wants people to see it. There's so much stuff that goes on that you cannot even see. So I'm sure everybody, for instance, has seen the the eBay, PayPal item sell, the item seller messages. Go to this link, buy your bursters. Those items have to come from somewhere. It's not some human
not
farming
just on eBay, but yes, even in our local
exactly. So those are all bots farming items, and a bot can farm thousands of items a day because they basically farm 24 hours a day. And you go find your little cluster of level 8 portals out in Russia somewhere, right? Put together 70 portals, put VR multi-hacks on everything, and you get your 8 to 10 bots, and they each come up with about 10,000 items per day, right? That stuff still goes on. You just don't see it because you can't see people hacking, right? That does not show up in COM.
Right.
But yes, like you said, we saw this. We're seeing the same thing here. Things have trailed off considerably since the summer. I'm trying to think. I haven't been that active in our bot hunting group here in the past couple of months, but it seems things have died down for the most part. It's not completely contained, but Niantic has been making some progress as far as the bot problem goes. I think the latest is they, and I see this on the Ingress group too. People will say, "Hey, why is it that I go out and I'm forced to glyph hack?" Right. So this is where you simply tap the hack button. You're not holding it down, but the client says you have to do a glyph hack. If you don't do it, it says something to the effect of portal has been glyph locked or something to that effect. That is one of Niantic's anti-bot measures. So for some reason, they have an automated system in place now that will detect suspicious bot-like activity. It's not always perfect. It does catch humans once in a while, but it seems to do a pretty good job of finding bots that run either third-party software or they run on Android emulators or basically GPS spoofing, things like that. So Niantic has taken a big step because I know beforehand, anytime you report a bot to Niantic, it does have to go through a human. So you can imagine how many reports they have to sift through.
Right.
They have to do a bit of investigation so they're not just banning actual players left and right. And then they finally hit the button to terminate an account. But that means, and we've noticed this too, anytime there's an American holiday, right, the 4th of July, bots were running crazy because nobody was at the Niantic offices reading the reports. So you had bots going around running for 2 days, 3 days, and nobody was taking them down. We send the reports, but literally nobody was in the office handling those reports. Now, at least, it appears to be automated. So you can have someone running a bot, they go crazy, but it gets shut down, let's say, within, 12 to 24 hours. So they are making progress. I'm hoping they can walk that fine line between finding the automated bots without hitting real players, because that's always the difficulty, right?
I mean, it's been an issue. Obviously where you're from, but even yes, you see that all the time on the Ingress page. But so, do you have an idea of what Niantic's biggest flaw might be, either security-wise or design-wise? That maybe, just your opinion, but
right.
Noticed.
I guess with Ingress itself, and not so much Niantic, but I guess we talk about Ingress itself. Aside from all the cheating and spoofing and all that sort of thing going on, I guess I'll break it up into two things. So with Ingress, the game, I've always found that having this single playing field seems to cause some issues. So if you look at just about every other game and every other sport in real life, there's the concept of having tiers, right? So you might have, say, a novice league down here, and you might have a professional league up here. So you have some way of saying, depending on your skill level, depending on your level of commitment, you can play with other players of the same caliber. With Ingress, everybody is thrown into a single playing field. So you have the guys who can dedicate, 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day playing the game, versus those who only can, play after work or on their commute. So I know people have expressed frustration over that. Like, it would be great if there was even 2 tiers of Ingress, where one, maybe let's say you can only get up to level 8, but it's for the more casual players, right? The guys who aren't so hardcore and so intense. And then maybe once you get to level 8, you have the ability to say, you know what, I'm switching up to the, let's call it the competitive level of Ingress. And this is where you can get from levels 9 to 16, and it's the folks who are extremely dedicated to the game. So you don't have the so-called, the pros playing with the more novice players. I'm trying to think of even a single example in real life where there isn't a tiered competition. Everything you think of, you always try and pair up players of similar ability or similar skill. But in Ingress, nope, you got a deal. You could be, I don't know how many players have quit because they're just like, you know what, there's this one guy out there, I finally took all my portals back. He's always out there within 15 minutes taking back my portals. I cannot compete with that, right? Because when you think about it, success in Ingress is basically driven by how much you can play. There's not a lot of skill to it like there would be in baseball, football, even chess, something like that. It's really, when it comes down to it, how much time can you spend farming for items, and how much time can you spend driving around, driving to a far-flung area to put up the big field, to hack for keys. So yeah, you have the people who have the ability to play for hours on end every single day, going up against the people who say, I'd love to play more, but I have a family, and we have stuff going on every night, and I can't just come out to start making, fields in the city. So, to me, that's the most fundamental problem of Ingress, is that there are no skill tiers to separate the players. I'd love to see that. I don't know how Niantic's going to be able to do it.
No, I'm with you. It's not. Yeah, there's the whole skill tier, the social tier, lots of different. That's part of the beauty of the diversity that has attracted the game. But yes, there's. Yeah, different people operate on different levels.
Yeah, and I think it would be nice if there were some way where the more casual players can get together and play without being steamrolled by a level 15 or level 16 guy, who has 100 million AP.
Hey, hush. No problem at the 16 people, but
I know.
There ought to be a little sensitivity for people who are not willing to be out until 12:30 or 1 a.m. in the morning to take.
Yeah, or 6 a.m.
That too. Yeah. So yes, I agree with you. All right. Jorge.
Hey.
Hey, you're back.
I'm back. Well, Brian, I want to know something because, well, I have a little problem with my connection. So, to sum up a little bit, how does all this that you explained, how does that affect your view on all the spoofers and bots around in general? Which would be your conclusion of these guys or these people playing with this walking over the rules?
Yeah, so if I understand what you're saying is, I guess now that I've been exposed to the other side of the equation, how does that I guess affected my outlook? I guess for the most part, once you talk to some of the folks who are looking into these more creative ways of playing, like I said, a lot of them are just regular players. They haven't given up and only played from home. They're not just spoofing around doing that all day. That would be no fun. They are actually real players who go out there, but they found some frustration in the game. So, for instance, I know one fellow who he just runs a farming bot. He still goes out and plays every day. He's a leader in his community. I'm not going to say where he is in the world, but I can understand. I say, what? Sometimes I can't go out to play as much as I want because I'm down to 7 level 8 bursters. And I need to go out and I need to farm. And, we do a thing here in Toronto every Friday. We'll go in and build a level 8 farm in a different place in the city, and we'll burn that out, So what he does, he says, I love playing so much. I just found a way where I can have this bot that just farms items for me. So he always has, like, thousands of items. And what he does, he gives it to other people in the community. He'll go through and he uses it himself. So, he's actually using that type of thing, which is totally against the TOS, obviously, but he's actually using it in his mind to play the game even more. Now, I know a lot of people say, but that's not fair. The part of the game is that you have to spend time farming. That is true. That is very true. But some people will say, what? I don't enjoy that aspect of the game as much. I have a better way of doing it. So that's what he's done. Same goes for a lot of the folks who just go through and scrape intel, and that I totally understand as well. The information is there. Niantic is giving us the information. It's basically voluntary at this point what you decide to do with that information. So people are saying, what? It's so useful. I don't care that it is technically a TOS violation. I'm going to keep doing it anyway because it is very useful to me. And I go through that, I'm like, yeah, I love it. I love having the fact that I have over 1 billion lines of comm stored on my computer. The cool stuff you can do with that. I was just talking to one of our players here, and we were talking about player retention, which is a whole other topic. And from my stats, I can tell you exactly how many players have joined Enlightened or Resistance in Toronto, and because it now tells you when they made the first field, when they made, well, I guess their first link, their first field, the first capture, and you can also guess how quickly a player progresses through the levels by looking at the resonators they deploy. So what that tells me is that we might have had, say, I'm going to pull up some numbers here, 700 new players join in the past month. But in the end, only 70 of them actually make it to level 8. So we've lost 90% of our players going from capturing their first portal to finally hitting level 8. What can we do about that problem? So we might look at, getting more people into social aspects of the game, and then you can just keep running this report. So I'm hoping that maybe, let's say, next February, I run the exact same report, and it turns out that we're now retaining 20% of the players. So there's no other way of getting stats like that. So this whole thing about the hashtag you see on G+, Intel, is it Intel or IITC is not a crime? I truly believe that. I don't care what Niantic says. If they're gonna ban Shaper Beast tonight because they see me talking about this because I'm scraping com, go ahead, right? If you're giving us the information, either give us the tools to do it, or the players are gonna make it up themselves. And I used to give Niantic a pass on this in the first year of the game because technically the game was in beta. So I'm like, okay, I understand you guys are still working on the game. We'll give you guys a chance. It's been 2 years now. Give us something already.
Yeah. Well,
Great answer.
I mean, it is such a frustrating part of the game for so many players. I mean, to just even rage quit because of, just these features. Now, any tips on how, not just the noobs, but I mean, like the senior players who just feel like, well, what can I do? I play legit. I do this, I do that, but then like this person, all I have to do is sit in their living room, which I mean you just mentioned is not necessarily what they're doing. But but do you have any tips on how to ease their minds at all?
Yeah, I mean it's hard to really say to have something that applies in every case. I know personally, I just try not to take the game too seriously. I know this is something people say all the time. They say, this is just a game. It's not quite that simple because it does take place in the real world. People do spend real money and a lot of their time playing the game, so you are going to have that personal investment in it. But in the end, we're fighting over, portals that don't exist in real life, Yeah. This whole thing that people get upset over someone taking their portal, it's not your portal. It is a portal. Just try not to get too personally invested in this whole drama, Like I said, I've had bots roll through my neighborhood. We know they're bots, right? Because, like you said, Daphne, they just move way too quickly. They're able to move from the waterfront here in Toronto onto the island, which is normally a 15-minute ferry ride, in seconds. So we know that's happening. But you know what? I'm like, yeah, whatever. If they take it down, I'll just go out the next day and take it back. Yeah, it's just a game. It's funny that I see people, I guess, try and use that against the spoofers and the botters. Like, why are you investing so much time in this spoofing technology? It's just a game. Like, I don't understand why you're taking it so seriously. To them, that's exactly why they're doing this sort of thing, because they don't take the game as seriously as some people do. They say, you know what, if I break a few rules playing this game, no big deal, right? It's just a game. It doesn't really affect real life. But, of course, there are people who take exception to that. So the only thing I can say is just, take a step back, realize that there aren't actually portals outside your window, and this whole thing just happens in the virtual world, right? That's all I can say.
Gotcha.
Wow. Well, I have there's a secret bird man that wants to know something. How long does the average player plays based on your data?
How long do they play?
Yeah.
That's hard to say because like we've had a lot of players who have stopped for a few months, but then you see them pop up again. So it's very hard to say how long someone has been playing, because if they stop playing, you can't tell. There's nothing in COM that says, we have the whole thing, Shaper Beast has joined the Enlightened. There is no corresponding message that says Daphne has left the game, right? So you don't really know. The closest stat I can come up with is, like I said, about player retention, and also how active, or how many active players we've seen in the past day, in the past week, in the past month, in the past 6 months. And it's not, I don't think that's just a problem locally for us, but I think it's also an issue Niantic should be concerned about, because I know they say, I don't know how many downloads we're up to. It's like 5 million or 7 million downloads of the Ingress app. I can tell you they're certainly not anywhere close to 7 million players, on this planet. Ignore all the thing about spoofers and bots. I would say, I think if we're lucky, if we have maybe 200,000 active players on the entire planet, and that would be defined as people who've turned on the scanner and done something, deployed or linked or hacked or fielded in the past month. So if you look at that, it's it's growing, but perhaps not as quickly as some people think, or as quickly as what the download numbers might suggest. But to know how many people actually, how long they play, that's very difficult to tell.
Wow, that's a shocking number that you just gave. But well, let's go to something else. Do you have any thoughts on how to keep players interested?
Yeah, that's a good one, because like I said, I tend to be more of a casual player, and I'm not much for multiplayer games. Ingress is really the first game I've really gotten into that was on the MMO side of things. We actually just had a kind of a meeting of the minds here in Southern Ontario just last week, discussing that particular issue. And from what I can tell from talking to other players around the world, it's something that both factions face, doesn't matter where you are, right? So you have, like I said, all these players who join, and if you're lucky, you might get 10% of them who actually make it to level 8. So how do you get people to keep playing the game? Because when you think about it, if you want to do the big field ops, you're going to ask somebody, say, hey, you want to jump in my car? We'll drive for 3 hours up north, hack a portal in the middle of nowhere, and we'll sit there until we get the signal to throw the link, and we'll make a 35 million MU field. Who does that? Right? Why would someone do that for a game that has no real-world impact? And I think, again, hard to generalize, but I think one of the things that we could all do better, and I think one of the most powerful factors is the social aspect of the game, right? I don't know how many times I've heard a player saying, I'm going out not because I need to hack or farm or make this link. I'm going out because all my friends are going out to do this. So to them, it's not so much the game that keeps them playing. It's that the Ingress gives them an excuse to go out to hang out with people. So most of the ops that we do here, at least on the Enlightened side, always involves some kind of food event. Food, drink. That's the thing. I mean, I've right? I'm pretty sure that's the same everywhere else. I mean, I've done some ops where I say, you know what, let's go out farming, and that was the only thing on the list, and nobody would show up. It's like, we're not going to come out just to farm for items, But as soon as you put in, we're meeting at the brew pub before and after, you get like 30, 40 people coming out. So I think that's that whole socialization aspect, So you see that new agent joining in COM, and you chat them up and say, hey, what neighborhood are you in? Do you need help? Do you need items? Do you have any questions? And I will try, and I'm not that great at this, but I will try and meet them in person. Because I think as soon as you meet somebody in person and you realize they're just like another human being, that automatically ratchets up your your level of investment in the game. So that type of thing, I think, is probably, if I had to only do one thing to try and keep players interested in the game,
Mm-hmm.
is to get them out to these social events. And it doesn't even have to be Ingress related. Let's just go out, like, forget about farming your P8 farm or anything like that. Let's just go out to a movie somewhere. You know, let's go to see, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy or the new Hunger Games or whatever. You know, when those came out, let's get a bunch of people together. Nothing to do with Ingress. You don't even have to turn on your scanner. Just get it to the point where you're not simply teammates, but you're actually friends. You know, because that,
Sure.
I think, is going to be the most powerful driver. It's certainly not the promise of hacking another 100 X8s. You know, I'm not going to get out on a cold, snowy day for that. But I will go out if everyone says, hey, we're all going to go out and, you know, go to this, check out this cool new restaurant. Oh, and by the way, that restaurant, you can float over 3 portals. Okay, that's fine. You know, let's do that. Right?
So you think that even the most compromised players on Ingress would quit the game if that social part didn't exist?
I think there would certainly be a lot more players who stopped playing the game if all they had in the game was the hacking and the deploying and the linking. Now, I mean, obviously, you're going to have the I guess the more OCD type who will just keep playing the game no matter what. All they want to do is go out and hack. All they want to do is make their fields and links. But that's the issue, right? If we only have, let's say, 10% player retention with that reason, then I don't think that's very good. 9 out of 10 players don't stick around long enough. And that may be because that's the best you're going to get if you're only using the game as the reason to play, right? So we need to find reasons outside of the game to get that, you know, even if we reduce the 90% loss down to 80%, on the flip side of the coin, that means instead of retaining only 10%, we've actually retained 20%. So now you have double the number of players. And if you're doing that for your faction in your city, but the other faction is not doing that, then over the long run, you're going to have a lot more firepower. But it takes effort, right? I mean, we have so many new players coming into Toronto. I mean, I literally cannot keep up with the number of new players, and it takes time. You know, it takes a lot of effort. You got to chat them up. You want to try and meet with them. You want to try and organize these social events. It's a lot of effort, you know, which is probably why this is such a big problem just about everywhere that and with everyone that I've spoken to. You know, it takes effort to keep player retention high.
True.
Yeah,
All right.
true.
So speaking of effort and not player retention, but viewer retention. We're really blessed with some really great viewers, and they too have their own questions that they would like to ask. So if it's all right, I would love to include some of their questions in for tonight. Now, and there's one person in particular who's been, well, maybe slightly trollish, but it's a popular question, so I'm going to ask it. It is from Mr. Andrew Krug, who unfortunately could not be here tonight, but he is watching. He's just traveling right now for work, but we don't want to know what he's in his hotel room doing other than just watching us, so all right, so he asks, as an educated cellular biologist, what do you think the likelihood is that and yet to be discovered force or energy like XM could affect, influence, or shape people, their personalities, and their mind outside the control of the host or the person?
Well, I don't know about a force or energy. I mean, there are lots of examples already of behavior modification, whether it's through, you know, viral infection, drugs, or some other parasite. Whether there's some mysterious exotic matter out there that could meaningfully affect human behavior, it seems highly unlikely, just because, not to say that it can't affect the way we behave, but to affect us in a way where, I guess in the backstory in Niantic, it's something that makes you more creative, right? Now, again, like I said, there are all sorts of drugs out there that can already affect the brain chemistry to let you alter your mood, alter your abilities, at least temporarily.
Not familiar with
Form, but in the form of energy, I don't know that the physics really work that way. So it's possible, but as far as I'm concerned, it's I don't think we should hold our breaths for that.
Well, but you believe in midichlorians, right?
Yeah, well, you never know. You might have the Force in your your family.
You know what? I gotta say though, I mean, the stuff from the Force or like the whole Star Wars thing, I mean, it did come from a very profound author who not only got. Anyway, we could get into this whole conversation about spirituality and Joseph Campbell and whatnot. And I think a lot of people here who are watching or will watch in the archives. But, all right, I do want to include some of our viewer questions here. Kyle T. has had a couple of questions. One, I mean, just as a fellow photographer, would like to ask, Kyle asks, as a professional photographer, do you resubmit poor portal photos?
I do, only because it pains me if I see a really crappy photo, especially one you can tell someone just looked out the window of their car. You see the window frame, you see the antenna, and it's blurry because they're traveling at 60 miles per hour past a church or something like that. So if I see that, I will try and take a picture. And sometimes I will have, if I have my DSLR with me, take a really nice photo. I know Niantic says you should be taking with your smartphone and so on, but I don't care. I'll take a really nice photo and submit it. Sometimes it gets accepted, other times it doesn't. But yeah, I when I see that, I'm like, oh, you could do so much better with that.
Right.
So yes, definitely yes.
And I have to admit, we actually have a local player in Washington, D.C. who I don't know how professional he is as a photographer, but he is an extremely talented photographer. And even though he's resistant, I will admit, I am very envious of some of his talent. But yeah, he has resubmitted some amazing photos for some portals, and people, and I see public posts for fellow explorers, and they're like, wow, because a lot of people come to DC for the portal density that we had.
Right.
But they're like, wow, I hit 100,000. I think someone had pointed out, or 10,000, and it was a very gorgeous photo of DC or the Washington Monument that this photographer had taken. And no, I think that's part of the beauty of the game. Not only recognizing and going to a lot of these portals, but seeing them in whatever perspective that photographer sees at whatever point in time that they happen to be there. So I encourage that. So all you really cool creative photographers out there, please, yeah, resubmit, and Niantic can make that decision whether or not to do that. But
and another suggestion from Niantic, again, that seer badge, what is it, 5,000 portals submitted to get black? Why don't you include photo submissions with that? And encourage people submitting nice photos. So if people knew that even submitting 5,000 photo edits is quite an accomplishment, but it's not nearly as insane as actually getting 5,000 portals themselves accepted. So why not include photo submissions as part of your seer badge, right? I think that would get a lot more people going out getting high quality photos and not just taking crappy pics just for the sake of submission.
The problem here is who judge the photos.
Well, Niantic is already doing that, right? So they have people who go through and say, now whether or not they're doing a good job, that's a whole other discussion, but Niantic already has those procedures in place, and I think you're awarded some AP, I think, if you get a portal photo accepted, whatever it is, 100 AP or something like that. So, yeah, 500 AP. So, I mean, the system is already there. The accounting system is already there, and it knows when you've had a portal photo accepted. So why not count that towards your seer badge? There'd be a lot less griping about it if Niantic did that for us.
True. All right, one more question, also from a former guest. This is from Ruth Shepard, and hi, Ruth.
Hey, Ruth. Yay.
She wants to know, What's your favorite part about playing Ingress in Toronto?
Now, I know Ruth was in Toronto very recently. We actually met in person. It was during one of our weekly farming runs, and it was funny because this was during the whole the triple hacking bonus. So whenever we built a farm, we'd flip the entire thing over to blue for us Enlightened folks, and hack that because you get crazy amounts of XMPs. So I think there were 12 of us farming around the CN Tower, which is probably the most iconic building in Toronto. And all of a sudden, like another dozen Resistance folks show up, and we're all just walking around the same parking lot farming the portals. So I actually met Ruth in person that evening, so that was cool. Her question about playing Ingress in Toronto. I haven't actually played Ingress in a lot of other cities. I've been to Boston, a little bit in Ottawa. That's about it. But I think especially where I am, because I live in downtown Toronto, it's very easy. If I have that itch, that Ingress itch, and I need to scratch it, I can literally walk out my door, and I float over 3 portals from home. Within a 1-block radius, there's like another 10. If I walk up to downtown, there's about 1,000 I could hit. And the environment here, especially downtown Toronto, because we have so many people coming into work, it's always flipping. So if you're the type who just wants to go out and blow stuff up, you have lots of places to do that. If you want to go farm somewhere, you have lots of places to do that. If you want to go find a portal that has, 15, 20 fields attached to it, I never have to go very far. So, that's probably not terribly original. I'm sure it's like that in any large city. But yeah, to me, because I live downtown, it's really easy to level up. Like I said, I'm seeing new players these days without much help. They can go from 0 to 8 in probably, a couple of weeks. Back when I started when we were doing this in the beginning of the game, if you could make it to 8 in 30 days, in a month, that was amazing. These days, that's not so amazing, at least here in Toronto. So yeah, I love the fact that we have such good portal density here.
Very cool.
Well, Brian, this has been a really, really cool interview, and well, we are in the final stage of the show. So one thing we offer our guests is a second soapbox to share anything they would like to talk about, like something that may or may not have been discussed yet, or that something that you want to continue talking about, whatever you want, it comes to your mind.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we covered quite a bit there in the past. We went on for like about an hour now.
An hour now.
So yeah, I know. Wow, that went by fast. Yeah, I guess the whole thing is, I know this is gonna be funny. Some people think this is funny coming from me, but just go out there, enjoy the game. Try not to take it too seriously. I admit, like I said in our hangout earlier, I will troll some of our Resistance players, and I've done that in the past. So a lot of them are saying, well, he's the guy running the bots, he's running all the scripts, and I'll play to that sometimes, just to get them riled up. But so I apologize for that. But really, in the end, like I said, it's just a game. Try and have some fun. And it's the same thing for me. I always said if at some point I just don't enjoy playing the game anymore, because it's either because of the drama or because I'm bored with the game because there's nothing new coming out. Like back when we only had 8 levels to play with. I'm just gonna stop. Like don't feel the need that you have to continue to prove a point. So I don't even know how much I'm gonna play this winter because I just hit level 14. To get that 3rd platinum, to get to A15, that's going to take many, many months. And I'm just like, well, you know what, 14, that's pretty good. Not saying I'm retiring, but we'll see how that plays out.
Fantastic. Well, Brian, thank you so much for being with us tonight, for being so willing to be, I think one of our first, maybe even only solo guests for tonight. We were supposed to have Najveer razee from the Maldives Islands, but sometimes, I mean, let's face it, this is live, and time zones and God knows whatever don't always work, but we will have her join us at some point, but thank you for tuning in, at least for the Brian portion, but we still have more, so stay tuned.
And now it's time for a member from the Essex team to catch us up on the storyline. Welcome back, David Timothy. Hello.
It is actually a pre-taped video that he was providing for us, and we're trying to
secrets. Secrets.
No. We honesty.
Well,
It's
okay.
live. I'll learn the words here, but yeah.
Where is that recorded, David Timothy? Damn. I think we have.
I want to know what's been going on for the last couple of weeks.
Coming up in a couple of weeks, a few anomalies. And this week, it was announced that Oliver Linton Wolfe will be attending the Barcelona Darsana anomaly. And he will actually be giving out the Eve badge. It's not new, it's old. And actually, this is another chance for people who didn't earn the Eve badge to get it. If they bring one or more new agents between level 1 and 6 that they have recruited to Darsana Barcelona. And Susanna Moyer and Clue will be present in Charleston, South Carolina during the Darsana anomaly on December 13th. Now, as far as what's been going on in the story, we've seen a lot of posts from Hank Johnson over these last couple of weeks. It's been pretty nice. We've been getting a pretty constant flow of information from him. Going back to where we last left off, around November 16th, November 20th was our last show. On the November 26th, we got Jahan showed me her grandfather's library, and Hank began to dig through the library, and she's been showing him texts that, as Hank says here, Jahan helped me to interpret or at least understand some of the ancient texts. She was surprised by my interest in them. I explained to her that many of them seemed to be texts believed lost, connected to 13 Magnus and maybe even the Nazir. She laughed, amused, which kind of leads one to wonder how much does she know about this. You find out later on that police had arrived at her palatial home. He says, she sent me to another room where a guru asked me to sit down across from him. The weird thing is that my memory of what happened next is very blurred. The guru had him chant a mantra, and from that point on, it seemed as though the police who were hunting for him weren't able to see him. So that again reinforces that question, who exactly is this Jahan character? There's something more to her. She's not just a standard scientist or educated person that initially she led herself to be. So that's Hank. He escaped from that through the, whatever mystical powers there were that Jahan's family has. This is probably something like Asmati, where Jahan's family belongs to some long lineage, whereas Asmati was a member of, at least had knowledge of the 13 Magnus secret, apparently. Now, Devra has been more interesting. We've only gotten this one piece recently that said anything about what Devra's been up to. Excuse the clearing my throat, sorry. And this is part 2 of Felicia's story about Devra's interrogation. Well, kind of like a job interview, right? That's how they sold it to her, I'm sure, at Hulong Transglobal. And after she'd been, quizzed by them in several different times by different people, Ni, and now Hog. I'm sure I butchered that name, sorry, Huang. Yeah. Dr. Bogdanovich has decided to take a different way out, she was done cooperating. Deborah was led into the room. It says, this room is an interrogation room with Catherine Fan on the other side of the window watching Huang and Deborah talk. And after much of this, they're both getting frustrated. It comes to a point where Deborah stands up. She's tall. She reached into her purse. And she lights up a smoke. And talks to him about, where the vaccine is. It's clear he wants the vaccine, and he's not going to relent. And then Deborah walks up to him. She spins around and holds up her hand in front of Wang's face. He froze. Delicate fingers from the other hand reached up to her ring finger. This isn't a wedding ring, Dr. Huang. He'd initially called her Miss Bogdanovich. The fingers tripped a hidden spring and a needle popped out. It's a poisoner's ring. Huang lost control. He fled to the floor, tried to open it, but it was locked. You're going to inject me? Bogdanovich smiled. No. She turned back to the mirror and she jabbed the ring into her neck near her jugular vein. So I'm definitely on a cliffhanger to see what is going to happen next. And I'm sure it'll post before we can tell you about it next week. So you're just going to have to follow Felicia and find out what exactly it is that's going to happen. Now, before my time's up on this brief moment I've got here, I want to put in a plug also for First Saturday. Niantic Project and Ingress have been posting quite a bit, including this video that Susanna's posted, encouraging people to attend the First Saturday events this coming Saturday. You can see in this map there will be First Saturday events all around the world. So there's probably one close to you, including one locally here for me in Springville, Utah. So attend that if you're close by. And thank you for giving me this time to share the truth of the Niantic project and the investigation with you.
Well, guys, we are now back, and well, we are glad that you were here with us tonight. See you next week on another episode from Behind the Scanner. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Hope you'll join us for next week, and happy hacking, everyone. Good night, everybody.
Good night. See you guys soon.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, so, all right. So, Brian, you are from North America. And, I'm sorry, from Canada, and Jorge from Mexico. Do you guys know or have much of an influence with Thanksgiving? Is that as far as that's concerned?
No.
What was that? I missed that last part.
What is Thanksgiving to you people? Do you care about
Thanksgiving?
We
Well,
don't celebrate Thanksgiving.
So, all right, so I hear that, like, even in Europe, they're taking advantage of Black Friday sales. They have no idea what Black Friday means or what that significance is, but yeah, I think they'll even call them, like, black sales or something strange. No, good for you. I'm so glad you people are immune.
No, well, see, here in Canada, we have Thanksgiving, but it's in October, not November. It's a month earlier.
Oh, wow. All right, go Canada.